survive right away.
Okay.
Because we can't really trust that it will go well, right? That's the one thing I'm thinking of. Like, let's not plan for 15 runs if we botch this in the first run.
Okay.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, your plan is to head to the sector adjacent to the Thrun system, sort of stash the larger ship, the Tobruk, there, take the O'Neill into the Thrun system, attempt to use it and presumably its cloaking device to slip through the Dominion blockade, and then sort of do multiple trips to ferry as many people as you can back to the neighbouring sector and to the Tobruk. Once you've got as many people as you think you're going to get, then to basically take the Tobruk onto the final destination that you've got planned for these people. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, no problems. So, as I've said, it'll take you about 4 days using the standard FTL drives to get to the adjacent sector. So is there anything you guys want to do on that 4 days? So you've literally got 4 days of pretty routine travel through space. I'm just going to let's make a cheeky roll, see if anything untoward happens while you're travelling. No, it's fairly uneventful. So you've got 4 days where obviously you've got Tylo, she's monitoring the ship, but a lot of it's sort of fairly automatic. You know, you've set your destination, you've engaged your FTL drive. Occasionally you have to make minor course corrections, and obviously Tylo, you're sort of on standby, you know, monitoring the scanners, etc. All the normal day-to-day stuff you would do to make sure you have like smooth sailing, so to speak. But you've pretty much got 4 days where like not a lot's going to be happening of sort of like vital importance. It's all routine stuff. So is there anything you guys want to do during those 4 days? Any discussions you want to have? Any preparations you want to make? Anything like that?
Is there anything we can do to make the Tobruk harder to see? I don't know. I'm guessing cloaking is probably something that we would need a starbase for, but
yes, yeah.
Anything we can do to kind of hide how it outputs exhausts, or
not really, because it's such a large ship. Obviously, when it's sort of fully running, as it pretty much now is, it generates a significant power output, which is fairly easy to pick up. Obviously, we know space is like a vast distance as well, but the Tobruk is like fairly sizable, as we know from when you were exploring it previously. So it'd be pretty easy to pick up on like most ship scanners, because as we said previously, although they're not calibrated for fine scanning, we saw this previously when Tylo had to like reroute your scanners to like scan for the combat droids on the planet. By default, ship scanners are made to pick up like big sort of ship-sized stuff, and the Tobruk would stand out like a sore thumb to that sort of scan because it is quite vast as far as ships go. And although most of the sort of like tremendous power output of the experimental like event drive is sort of dampened down a bit by the shielding, it's still putting out an awful lot of power just to like keep it running, and to like the containment field itself is generating a lot of power to contain this like micro black hole that's supposedly at the center of it. So masking the power signature of the Tobruk would be quite a feat of engineering. I mean, Tylo, you're a bit more sort of clued up on this because obviously you've got the sort of like the engineering know-how. You're not even sure, to be honest, that like even if you could get to a starbase and like fit a cloaking drive to it, you're not entirely sure like a standard cloaking drive would be 100% effective, just because of like the vast amount of power needed to contain this event drive.
Yeah, we'd have to reinvent the cloak.
Yeah, you'd certainly need to find some way of like boosting the efficiency of a cloak if you were going to entirely mask it.
But that's something I'm working on anyway. So.
Yeah.
And then in terms of Kelty ships, are they kind of widespread across Dominion space, or are they kind of pretty rare?
They're fairly rare. I mean, they don't as a rule, as I described them previously, they're like a sort of a rapidly breeding species, but they tend to be more sort of like individuals. Like when they go into like combat, they don't go in like big warships. They go in like big streams of like fighter ships, because they're more sort of like individual like warriors rather than large like military forces that like move in lockstep. So large Kelty ships aren't really a thing very much, unless it's like this where they're like, oh, we need to make some new colonies because we've like colonized all the worlds in our home system, and then they build a bigger ship. But most of their other ships are like pretty small, sort of like 1-2 man ships, and there's a smattering of them about. They're not really that common, you know. You're not going to be out running across them all the time, but they're not like really rare. But you probably run across one every now and again, but it's not like if someone sees one, they're not gonna be like, oh my god, that's the mystical Kelty that we've heard about in legend. So they're a little bit on the rare side, but
okay. So I think we'd like to spend some of the time trying to get the Kelty crew to join our merry band of intrepid ne'er-do-wells.
Okay, well let's sort of play out like an abbreviated form of that discussion. So you've got Kaz Donk, who is the sort of female Kelty, who was the security chief, who was leading the sort of ragged band of survivors that you came across. I can't remember how many survivors we said there were, so I'm just going to say, in addition to her, there's like 8. So there's 9 Kelty survivors in all. She seems to be pretty no-nonsense. She's fairly hardy. She obviously marshalled these like 8 people together who are a mix of like her sort of security people who survived. Obviously a lot of them died when everyone went mad on the Tobruk and started killing each other. There's also like the odd like other person from like other sort of like departments who they found as they were like exploring the ship and holding themselves up. But she's fairly no nonsense and sort of pragmatic, which probably helped with her survival. So yeah, you're having this meeting. You're all sat. Are you having this meeting on the Tobruk, or are you on the O'Neill when you want to have this meeting?
I guess we're on the Tobruk because we don't want to leave it with them until they're certain that we're in control.
Okay, so what I'll assume for the moment is basically you're mostly on the Tobruk, but you've got like the O'Neill sort of like shadowing it. Now, Tyler, are you going to be staying on the O'Neill, or are you on the Tobruk?
I'll stay on the O'Neill. I'm not getting on that demon ship.
Entirely understandable. Okay, so obviously this will be on your sort of like your group comms, so you can still sort of take part in the discussion. So you're all gathered, apart from like Tyler, who's like on like the Zoom call window, and you're all sat around in what would have passed for like the mess hall on the Tobruk. Security Chief Donk has basically been supervising her people, like cleaning up the mess that was on the Tobruk. Since the cryogenic suspension things aren't really being used anymore, they've pretty much put like the dead people they've been able to like find in those chambers until they can get them somewhere where they can sort of like bury them, or more likely they've got time to do a space burial, but obviously like only like a day has passed, so they've not really had time to come to terms with it, and they're like, we best actually like make sure the ship's all good first before we worry about that, otherwise we might be joining them. So most of the dead are like in the cryopods at the moment.
Okay.
So you're sat around this table in the mess hall. Security Chief Donk is there, and what do you say to her?
So I guess I'll sit down with my best no-nonsense face and just say, Chief, it feels like we have to make a decision about what you and your people are going to do. We are on a mission to save some people from the Dominion. And if you and your people are willing, we could certainly pay you to serve as part of our crew, and pay you very well in this endeavor and future endeavors. And if you're not that way inclined, I guess we could talk about where you guys would like to be dropped off.
She nods, sort of tenting her hands together thoughtfully, and then says, "It's an interesting offer. We're not overly concerned with the money, to be honest." And she looks at you with the sort of large, like black, sort of amphibian eyes. Her sort of blue silvery skin, like refracting in the light of the ship's internal lighting. They only seem to like sort of blink occasionally, which is a little bit unsettling because they've just got these large, like solid, like black eyes, which are obviously massive because they evolved to like see underwater. And she looks at you and says, "Well, I'm not sure what you know about my people, Balan, but we are not overly concerned with the accumulation of material wealth and such like. It is the hope of every Keltie that at some point in our lives we may be drawn to a calling, and when we are, we give ourselves wholly to that calling." And then she sort of smiles and sort of half laughs as though to herself and says, "Take for instance, though, I suppose we all see ourselves as the heroes of our own particular story, whatever that may be. Those who see themselves as warriors dedicate themselves to that and seek to create a legend which is worthy of stories, and those like myself who are drawn to protecting and helping others, we dedicate ourselves to that in the hope that by helping others achieve their destinies, we may fulfill our own purpose. But it is a rare member of my species to whom the acquisition of physical wealth is a priority."
And what is your calling, Chief?
It is my belief, and the reason I signed up to Brooke's mission, that through no fault of their own, there are those who are perhaps either ill-equipped or it does not occur to them to protect themselves from the evils of this universe. And someone is required to stand between them and harm if they are ever to achieve their own goals. And that is the path to which I have dedicated myself. To my mind, it is noble to help others achieve their destinies and to protect people whilst they are working towards that aim. That is why I originally went into the Keltie security services.
And tell me, would your interest in protecting people go beyond the Keltie?
Yes, of course, we are not barbarians. We appreciate that the destinies of all of the races in this universe are somewhat intertwined. If one species falls, might not other species fall around them? Whereas if we are all able to stand strong together, then we are far stronger as a group than as a whole. As I've said, it is my belief that I help to protect others who are less capable of protecting themselves. And take, for instance, your own species. Might there not be some things that your species is generally more good at that mine is not, and vice versa? If we work together, we can shore up each other's weaknesses and bolster each other's strengths. Whereas if we act alone, all we have is our own strengths and our own failings.
Let me tell you about the people of Zol Prime and what they have endured over the last 400 years.
Please.
And now I have to remember what they've endured. So the people of Zol Prime are a symbiote. They have a symbiote relationship with are they all the people of Zol Prime, or are they different?
There's effectively two species on Zol Prime. There's the sort of humanoid inhabitants, and then there are the sort of worm-like symbionts. Okay. Now, the people of Zol Prime refer to themselves as Zol, but confusingly they also refer to the symbionts as Zol as well, because they sort of see themselves as all part of the same species, although biologically debatable.
Okay.
But they sort of... There's not one of these symbionts for every person on Zol, and it's seen as like a mark of sort of favour if you're like chosen to be implanted with one of these symbionts, because you gain access to like all the memories that this symbiont has recorded over its millennia long lifespan. So you effectively become like a living repository for like the history of that symbiont.
Okay. So once I explain all that, I'll explain that because their history goes back so far, they know things and remember things that concern or scare the Dominion in terms of the ancients who maybe created some other worlds. And as such, the Dominion have alienated them and effectively tried to wipe them out over the last 400 years. There are very few left, and those who are live in terror of bombs from space, from Dominion fighters, and have done so for many hundreds of years. They are a kind and generous people who ultimately deserve better than they have received from the Dominion. And we are determined to see some or all of them safely to a new home. And we are in need of assistance.
She nods thoughtfully and then says, "It seems a most worthy endeavour, and it does you credit that you would seek to help out a species other than your own. And there are many who would simply say that this is not their problem, and they would turn away from these people who are in danger." And then he says, "But tell me, this species you talk of, the Zol," she says, I seem to remember back in the history of my own people, we have, and then she sort of laughs again, almost as though to herself. I was, back when I was younger, before I had decided what path beckoned to me, I used to delight in reading the histories and the legends of my people. As you might imagine, a species like my own, where each of us tries to be the hero of our own stories. The only thing we delight in more than attempting to achieve our destiny is others chronicling our attempts. I seem to remember there were ancient legends of a species called the Koldar, who sound very much like what you describe. They were a twin species. Our legends say that in ancient times they were set there by the architects. I'm sorry, I don't know. That is the nearest word I can think of in your language. An ancient, almost holy species of beings spoke about in our ancient legends. They were set as a sort of living recorder of history, with the idea that each of these Koldar, when their host had reached the end of its life, the Koldar itself would move on to another host with all of their memories preserved, and in such a way would this history be passed down through the ages to when it might be needed again in the future.
That certainly sounds very similar. Perhaps they were called a different name in your tongue than that which they call themselves.
She reaches into her pocket and she like pulls out like a tablet basically, and she says, "Yes, I still read some of our transcribed texts now. Obviously, when we reached a certain level of technology, we digitized these texts, and the actual originals are now preserved." And she turns the tablet around and sort of like tweaks around with it, then turns it around and like slides it across the table to you, and it shows what appears to be like a digitized scan of an ancient manuscript. There's like flowing writing around it, which is a language you're not familiar with, and it depicts this luminous, almost angelic figure, which is seemingly composed entirely of white light, and it's perhaps been drawn with like chalk or something similar. It's like pure white, and it's standing there with like its arms outstretched, and then from behind its back are these sort of like smudges which sort of fan out from it, which could be like additional limbs or perhaps their wings. You're not sure. You can tell that obviously this book was like very ancient when it was scanned, so it's not entirely clear, and you can see like marks of like damage on the pages and sort of smudging and stuff like that. And he says, yes, this is one of our depictions of the architects from one of our earlier texts, although unfortunately by the time we reached the stage we could digitize these works, it had already degraded very much.
Okay. So tell me, Chief, will you and your people join us on this endeavour?
At this point I'm going to ask you, can you roll me 2d6 and add a 2 to it?
Hang on, that didn't work. That would be 4. Which I guess means they're getting off soon.
She looks thoughtful and she says, unfortunately, whilst I think your endeavour is worthwhile, and we are certainly happy to assist you in the short term, given our original mission was to ensure that due to the rapid expansion of our species was to locate other colony worlds. That need, although unfortunately we have lost the colonists we had, that need will still be present. My people will still need more colonies, and it is to that and to their protection I must dedicate myself. However, in the short term, since you've been good enough to rescue us from the fate in which you found us, we are certainly happy to help until it is convenient for you to drop us off at one of our worlds. As to whether my people will demand the return of the vessel to Brook, that is not my decision to make. It would have to be put before our government, but certainly until you can drop us off, we are happy to assist you.
And where are their lands?
She gives you the coordinates to one of the systems. Let me just have a look. I'll decide what system it is. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so it is this system here.
Okay.
The Eriza Horixa system.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chief. We will we could use your help, and as and when it's convenient for you, we will drop you off.
That is more than acceptable, and I know we've already thanked you for our rescue and your timely intervention, but let me just say again, from myself and the survivors of the Tobruk are also gathered around the table and they're sort of nodding. There's been a little bit of like conversation between them. You have our most sincerest of thanks. Although, unfortunately, as I say, we have lost the colonists. At least we will have a chance to lay the rest of the unfortunate crew to rest at a more appropriate time, and perhaps the efforts to spread our race out to further worlds can still yet succeed, and maybe we can learn something from the unfortunate events that occurred aboard the Tobruk. It seems clear to me that the event drive is not yet ready for such a long-term mission if a simple failure of the containment system can result in the catastrophe that happened aboard the ship. I'm sure that when I report this to the Kelty central government, they will want to recall the ship and conduct further study into the precise nature of what occurred.
And sorry, this technology, did they speak about it being the architect's technology or ancient technology, or what did they call it?
Draken tech.
Draken tech. Okay. And tell me, Chief, do you have any idea, was it the Draken who took your people?
So I don't know about the Draken taking my people. From what I understand, we have these angelic, I suppose you would say in your tongue, figures known as the architects that feature in our myth and legend. The Draken is depicted as their opposite number, a creature of darkness, I suppose a living void, if you would. It was said in the ancient legends of my species that the Draken, I suppose a sort of bogeyman, if you would, lurked in the unseen, in the dark places. I believe, from what I have heard, like I say, I'm not a member of the scientific division, from what I have heard, that the technology for what became the event drive was discovered in near a black hole, a few sectors away from our homeworld, and after much study and research, our scientists were able to meld it with our own technology and create the event drive. I'm afraid I don't know the details. As I say, I'm not a scientist or any sort of engineer.
Indeed, but the ships that took your people, the 500 from the cryo tubes, what did you recognize those ships? Do you know who that might have been?
I've never seen anything like them before. I must admit, now you mention it, I had not considered it before, but now you mention it, the dark, strange, almost biological design of those ships does fit with some of the ancient legends we have about the Draken, but those ancient legends are very vague, couched in myth and superstition from a bygone age. It may just be that I've made the connection since you have mentioned it, but now you have, it does very much call to mind the creatures of darkness that the Draken was described as.
Okay. So I guess the three of us will step aside and I guess agree that we drop them off in the nearest port and don't bring our new ship anywhere near their home planet.
Yeah, our ship should stay with us.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you planning to drop them off before you go and do this mission or afterwards?
Probably afterwards, because we don't have enough crew to manage two ships.
Okay.
And we may need a few red shirts between now and then.
Indeed.
Can I speak to Apollo?
You're on the Tobruk. You know that it seems to be possible to speak with Apollo wherever you are on the ship, because it's like the AI, it's threaded throughout all of the systems.
Okay, of course, yeah. So what I'd like to do is find a quiet corner where I can't be overheard by any Kelty, and ask Apollo to tell us everything it knows about Draken and Draken tech.
Okay, obviously it's been programmed by the Kelty, so again in its sort of fairly sort of modulated voice, it relates to you that the Draken were a figure of dread and superstitious awe in Kelty society. It is rumoured that at one point in time the Draken was thought to have travelled to the Kelty world and was supposed to have taken some of the Kelty away with it, so like scooped them up. Over time that has been mythologized into, it sort of came for like evildoers and things like that and sort of shepherded them away or took them away to some sort of afterworld or afterlife punishment. But again, it's sort of couched in vague legends and myths. Apollo speculates that, as with many myths of primitive peoples, it may be that the Draken is simply the mythologized version of some sort of advanced race that once visited the Kelty homeworld. That may also be the case for the architects. It's notable from it's got quite a huge database, obviously. It's notable that the mention of the architects, these luminous sort of angelic figures in ancient Kelty mythology, that after this time when they mention the Draken visiting their world, there's no further mention of like the architects in their mythology after that period.
Okay.
Is there anything else I can assist you with?
The Kolar.
Indeed.
Do you have any information regarding the Kolar and their location? And
the Koldar are a species described from the records of the earliest spacefaring days of the Kelty species. They were a twin species consisting in part of a humanoid race with a symbiotic-like creature that dwelled within the humanoid. It was believed by the Kelty that these creatures, these symbionts, were created by the architects as a living record to record all of galactic events. They would travel around widely and they would perfectly record anything they saw or experienced. When the host species died, the symbiont would be implanted into another host and would carry with it both all of its memories and those of the previous host that it inhabited, and thus this record would be preserved as a living history.
And what is the most recent record you have regarding the Koldar?
The most recent records we have of the Koldar are over 900 years old, when a deep space vessel of the Kelty encountered a stricken freighter. When they went aboard to try and assist, there was a man on board who was injured near death. Unfortunately, he was unable to be saved, but when his body was autopsied to ensure that there were no pathogens or contagious diseases, it was discovered that one of these symbiote creatures, unfortunately deceased, was present in the body.
Okay.
Please note that it is not confirmed that this was a member of the Koldar species. However, that is what it has been labelled as, probably being in my databanks.
Okay. And where was there any reference in your databanks of a homeworld for the Koldar?
It's a cross-referencing. It is my belief that, given the taking into account galactic drift and a reasonable margin of error based on the the old records that the likely homeworld for the Kaldar is the Thurum sector. Sector 0906.
Okay. Excellent. Have you been able to find out any more about the ships that took the settlers from your scans?
The only thing I've been able to determine from the scans is that the ship's interior was impervious to further scanning. The exterior appeared to be some form of living or biological metal. The ship's flight path and their immediate reactions, their turning circles, their adjustments to their flight paths, etc., almost suggested a single living entity for each ship, rather than a large vessel crewed by a multitude of individuals.
Okay. And if you were to cross-reference them with what you know about the Draken,
Yes.
would your records indicate that there's similarities between those ships, the different ships that arrived in your records?
There are definite similarities. I would estimate, based on present data, that there is a 70% likelihood that the entities referred to as the Draken in Kelty legends are the same entities that we encountered recently. Unfortunately,
Okay.
I cannot narrow it down further without additional information.
Okay. That's close enough for me. It'll be interesting to see if the Kaldar have any information on these Draken, since their memory banks go back so much further.
Indeed, I would welcome the chance to converse with one of these living records myself, as although my memory banks are extensive, I of course only possess the information that I was programmed with by my creators and that I have amassed since through direct experience.
Yes, I think it would be very beneficial for us to combine your data banks with such a data store.
I concur. More information allows me to function more effectively and make more accurate decisions.
Now, speak to me about the safety of using the black hole propulsion system.
The event drive.
Yes.
The event drive functions by creating an entrance point into a different dimensional space. As you are aware, no doubt, even with the faster than light drives that are currently commonly available, there is a set limit that physics determines for the speed at which a faster than light drive can reach as its maximum. The event drive allows one to step around this limit by pushing the ship into an other dimensional space where the rules are not the same as they are in normal space, and in this way the ship can travel far faster. The event drive, when activated and up to full power, allows one to effectively instantaneously travel to any area that is occupied by an existing black hole. From where, for example, if you were to activate it where we are now, you would be able to effectively instantaneously exit from any of the black holes in this sector of space.
Okay.
At which point it brings up like a map of the black holes, which you can see on the
Yeah.
map.
And the white dots, what are they? They're not black holes,
No,
right?
the white dots are your normal sort of systems with planets, etc. And
Yeah, okay.
the black dots are your black holes.
Okay. So we could jump up here to North Cafis, for example.
Yeah, effectively, you could like instantly travel to there, like in almost no time at all.
Okay.
But then, like, if you wanted to travel to like a space adjacent to there, then you'd have to use like your normal FTL drive.
Okay. And
At which
What
point,
dimension is
Apollo's. Yeah, sorry.
What's the dimension it goes into?
The Apollo basically says, there's not been a name like coined for it. It's just referred to as like another dimensional space.
Have you got any scanner readings for that area since you've travelled through it?
Yes, of course. Would you like me to send you the data across?
Yes, please.
At which point, yeah, it starts sending you through the like interlink between the ships. It starts sending you across all this data, and basically, like when you look at it, it looks as though when you enter this like other dimensional space, like all of the sort of sensor readings that it's been picking up just go absolutely like crazy. Like the readings don't make any sense. So like all the readings you normally get with your normal scanners don't seem to make a lot of sense. They're just like wildly fluctuating readings. Apollo continues and says, unfortunately, the scanners are of limited effectiveness in the other dimensional space because it operates by different laws than our own universe. However, the event drive, whilst I postulate that in the future, with iterations of the event drive, it may be possible to more precisely exit this other dimensional space to seemingly any point within our space. At the moment, because of difficulties in pinpointing the correspondence between this other dimensional space and our own, it is far easier to lock onto an already existing exit point from this other dimensional space, the black holes, and then use those. So whilst we can drop in from any point, if we were to simply drop out at a random point in this other dimensional space, it is currently very difficult to predict where we would end up in our space, whereas black holes seem to exist in both our dimension and this other dimension, making them stable points which can be used to plot an efficient exit.
Wouldn't pulsars do the same, though?
It is technically possible, yes. The event drive has only been used for a short space of time prior to the incident. The full capabilities of it are not yet known. The normally extensive testing that would take place was expedited due to the desperate need for additional colonisation space by the Kelty species. In fact, there were numerous protests, at which point it basically sort of like pings you like some like video files, and you basically see like this what looks like some sort of like official building sort of surrounded by like loads of like Kelty like waving like placards and like shouting angrily. They've got like weird sort of symbols on the placards that you don't recognise, and they're like screaming. There's like guards outside the building. Apollo continues. There were numerous protests on the Kelty homeworld by those who feared that the drive itself had not been properly tested and was not yet ready for use. However, it was believed by the government officials that the need for additional space for the Kelty species outweighed the need for further extensive testing.
What's the time correlation difference between the two dimensions? You say it's instantaneous, but clearly you're travelling through a different space for some period.
Indeed, the time spent in the other dimensional space, by our standard of time, seems only to last a few minutes, and that does not seem to vary regardless of the distance that one is travelling between black holes' exit points. So whilst not technically instantaneous, it is far more rapid than traditional FTL transit.
Well, it's food for thought.
Is there anything else I can assist you with?
No, I don't think so. Thank you very much, Apollo.
You're most welcome.
Oh, Balan, you have changed the access codes to that computer, haven't you? We don't want them getting some.
Notions.
Yeah.
Yes. Is that a thing we can do, John?
Well, since technically the sort of AI Apollo seems to like control all of access to anything, you'd probably have to discuss that with the AI.
Okay.
Because it wouldn't be a case of the... Because pretty much the AI sort of like mans everything. The crew just pretty much tell the AI, like, take us here, go here. So it wouldn't be... If the Kelty like did want to like shipjack the Tobruk, for want of a better term, it wouldn't be a case of they'd just like grab hold of the steering column and like pilot it away, like hacking into the system, like you would do if you wanted to like steal the O'Neill. You'd have to like literally hack into it to unlock it and then like pilot it away. It'd be a case of like convincing the AI, like, oh, we should really like do one. So obviously, if you guys want to basically sort of say like, oh, Apollo, like, if the Kelty like try and take you anywhere, don't do it. You'll have to discuss that with the AI.
Okay. So, Apollo, one last thing before I let you go. How do you feel about being
Being part of the crew.
yeah, being part of our crew? We are a intrepid band of explorers and freedom fighters and general ne'er-do-wells, and we would like you and the Tobruk to join our crew.
Strictly speaking, I do not feel anything about it. I'm an artificial intelligence. I do not have emotions. However, it is in my programming that I am an exploration vessel. I am designed to explore. That is my primary purpose.
Okay. And is there a way that we could prevent anyone who is not me accessing your ability to travel?
Of course, the final decision to travel anywhere ultimately rests with myself. Unless I were to be disabled and the ship to be rerouted to manual control, which would be an extensive retrofitting effort. Whether the ship move, I am, for all intents and purposes, as you would understand it, the ship, and the ship is me. Therefore, in order for the ship to move, I must will it to be so. It is perfectly within my capabilities to ignore selected instructions, such as the contradictory instructions that were given by the members of the crew that were affected by the incident. In order to safeguard myself, as you were aware, I put myself into hibernation whilst the incident played itself out. I'm perfectly capable of ignoring commands from people who are a danger or who are providing contradictory commands.
Okay. 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 So, can we agree, you and I, that we will travel to this, whatever, 1066 to meet the Kaldar, and we will try and extract as many of the Kaldar as we can and move them to a a secret location, and while doing so, we would allow you and the Kaldar to exchange information, which may be beneficial to us all in terms of understanding the Draken, as well as many other historical references of import. And could we agree that directions from anyone else who is not me or you to contradict that plan would be ignored?
It is my primary directive to aid in colonization efforts. That is my function. And as I've said, I would welcome the opportunity to expand my databases. So yes, I'm quite happy to agree to this. And until this has been accomplished, any commands that would attempt to contradict this will be ignored.
Okay. Then we have an accord, and I think it is in all of our interests.
Agreed. Okay, so while all this crazy like AI discussion has been going on, what's Tam been up to? Four days of like oil baths and robo maintenance.
Yeah, you're still muted.
Double muted.
Hey, double the protection.
Mm-hmm. I suppose it's a case of Tana actually having to come up with some new ways to spend his time, because previously he would have been doing a bunch of exercises, which he doesn't need to do now because his body is made from steel. So
yeah, I'll say one of the small, I suppose, sort of fringe benefits of having been rebuilt to basically be a robot is that like you don't really need to like hit the gym anymore, because it's not like you're going to be like packing on the excess pounds or anything, if you just sat there.
So I don't know, but probably reading then, I guess, is a way to, in these environments, to spend a lot of his time. So
Okay.
maybe that, and then engaging in a lot of meditation. He's basically content to leave well enough alone, because he's not an expert in almost anything we need to do in the next several weeks, aside from maybe helping, facilitate the escape. So probably keeping up on, well, like studying basically, and meditating.
Okay, so obviously, as I said, it takes you 4 days to get to the neighbouring sector to the where Zol Prime is situated. Obviously, you're gonna have to like pay your mercs in the meantime, so you'll need to deduct 2,000 credits from your stash to pay your mercs.
Yeah, I'll do that now.
Okay, lovely. And then what I'm going to suggest we do is we have like a short sort of like 5-minute break here. Go refresh your drinks, use the facilities, etc. We'll come back after 5 minutes and we'll pick up with you guys sort of on the O'Neill heading into the Thurun system. Okay, so we'll be back in 5. And in fact, while we're waiting for the others to get here, obviously we're starting off with you guys heading into the sort of Zol space, the Tharun system. Can we please have a roll of a d6 from Tan? Okay, so as you're all obviously aboard the O'Neill, you're heading, presumably under cloak, you're heading into the Tharun system. As you're heading into the system, Tan, you start getting a vague sort of uneasy sort of feeling, like sort of like just like tickling in the back of your mind.
Is it anything that he would sort of understand from before? Like, is this a thing that happened? Or?
You believe you're sensing some sort of presence, a disturbance in the way, and it's one that feels familiar to you. It's one that you felt before when you were previously contacted by the other way user, Zora Z, the one that you'd arranged to meet in roughly a month's time, the one I promised to show you the true power of the way. Obviously that was before your rebuilding, so to speak, and the feeling is like a little bit fainter and it feels a little bit more distant due to your sort of altered circumstances. You think you may not have even noticed it before, except like you may not have noticed it now, but besides the fact that like you're familiar with like the feeling of this like presence, like you felt it before. Obviously, what if anything you choose to do about that is entirely down to yourself.
I'll probably have mentioned the fact that I think there's a Dominion, maybe a Void Knight somewhere here, and I don't know if they will be able to tell that I'm here. They might not.
Okay, so as you guys are all on the O'Neill, you're heading, so you've parked the Tobruk, for want of a better term, in the adjacent sector. You're heading in under cloak on the O'Neill into the Tharun system where Zol Prime is located, where the Dominion blockade is. Tan mentions that he believes there may be a Dominion way user, perhaps a Void Knight, in this system that he's sort of like faintly sensing through the way, although unless you've chose to keep it secret, Tan, you would probably both know that Tan's been having some like difficulties with his like connection to the way since his extensive rebuild. Tan tells you...
Is this the same presence that you felt the last time?
I think so.
Okay. Then we have plans to meet that person in a few weeks still, right?
Yeah, sometime still.
Okay.
So, do you want to stay back on the other ship?
It would probably be a good security measure if I'm not close where we don't want the Dominion to look. Just to be on the safe side.
Okay.
Yeah, you know that effectively it's in about sort of 5 weeks' time you'd agreed to meet this person.
Okay. Okay. So, if you stay on the Tobruk, we can scurry out, get the princess, make a plan with her and her people to get some of the symbiotes and some of the people off, and hopefully this Void Knight won't be able to sense us if you're not with us through the cloaking. Of course, we won't be able to sense them either.
And of course, obviously, if things like do turn a little bit spicy, it means you're going to be without Tan's like fairly formidable abilities should things go south.
There's of course always the option if I join the increased scrutiny, of course, but if things do go south, I can probably draw the eye away quite easily because I would be interest target number one.
And obviously, I believe do you still have the fighter craft?
Yeah, we still have the bounty, right?
Yeah, so you've still got the bounty on the O'Neill. So, worst case scenario, if you did like, oh, Tan, we need you as like a distraction, you could potentially put Tan in the bounty and then have the O'Neill go off in like a different direction. That's always a possibility, and just throwing a suggestion out there. Obviously, it's up to you guys what you want to do.
Let's just throw caution to the wind and say, fuck it.
It's only Tan, right?
I've already done this once, so.
Okay,
Won't
so
be
then
anything new.
You assume Balan's probably joking, given that you're like siblings. I don't know how strong the banter is between you two normally, but whether this is like a normal sort of like bit of back and forth. But
I think there's probably been a good amount of like gallows humor
yeah,
around the fact that Tan died.
yeah, that's true.
Right, so we take Tarn, we take the security droid that's kind of repaired.
we take Tan's bodyguard.
Are we taking Mr. Protocol? I don't think we're going to need him.
We probably should, just to be safe.
Okay. We'll
You
take
never know when you're
Protocol
going to need
droid
to
as well.
translate something and it's a nightmare. Or at least leave him on the O'Neill so that we can communicate to him quickly.
And so kick him on there then. Yeah.
We want to leave most of the mercs with the scientist on the Tobruk.
Well,
Just to
we'll
make
take
sure.
we'll take skeleton crew then for
Yeah.
mercs.
So how many mercs are you planning on taking with you?
So why don't we take 4 and leave 6?
Okay. So we've got Tan on the bounty. Are you taking Grook, your bodyguard, on the bounty as well?
Our group's on board.
Ah, yeah, but are you going to keep him on the O'Neill, or is he going to like squeeze himself into the bounty again with
He
Tan?
can squeeze into the bounty with Tarn.
Okay.
It's comical when they get out.
Yeah, to be fair, it is pretty comical trying to watch this giant lizard man squeeze himself into
Next to
a
giant
one-man
robot
ship
man, yeah.
that's already got a giant robot man in. Yeah. Okay, so we've got Tan and Grook in the bounty. We've got Balan and Tylo on the O'Neill with the protocol droid, the sort of partially repaired security droid, and 4 of the mercs.
I also have a R2D2 spin-off.
Oh, yes.
2R2D or something we call him, did we?
Indeed.
So I will bring him too.
Indeed, you have your repair droid, effectively. So 2R2D, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so as you head into the Thrun system, obviously the bounty is like sort of grappled underneath the O'Neill so it can benefit from its cloaking device as you head in there. As you get into the system, you are met by a scene of absolute chaos as you get nearer to the planet. You see the Dominion ships that were previously blockading the planet appear to be being attacked by a rusty ragtag fleet of small 1-2 man vessels. These are obviously extremely old ships. They look like they belong in a museum rather than in space. Even from like your fairly sort of short examination at long range, as you watch this sort of combat unfolding, Oh, there we are. What can I say? My descript. Can you hear me? Testing, testing. Can you hear me now at all? I'm guessing you guys probably still can't hear me.
Yeah,
No, we can hear you now.
Oh, huzzah!
Praise Gale.
That's it. Don't know what was going on with that. My Zoom was just suddenly like, nah. And just like disappeared. And it was like, oh, I'm reconnecting you. It's like, you've got no internet connection. I was like, I have, because like I'm on the internet. But, you know, never mind. We'll press on. These things are sent to trials, so to speak. So, as I say, as you guys enter the system, you see a scene of absolute chaos. The Dominion ships are being attacked by this ragtag fleet of old sort of like museum pieces, like 1-2 man sort of fighter crafts. Even from your long range scan as you're approaching, it's pretty obvious that although these smaller ships are putting up like a valiant attempt, they're hopelessly outmatched and outgunned, and they're probably going to be destroyed in fairly short order. But nevertheless, these smaller ships seem sort of like pretty sort of bravely like hurling themselves at the Dominion vessels.
How big is the Dominion presence?
It's pretty much an entire fleet. It's like a large. It's from what you remember previously, it's the Dominion Shadow Fleet. So it's a pretty large fleet of ships composed mainly of star cruisers and gunships. You notice that the gunships that were previously sort of lined in this blockade appear to have now sort of like turned themselves so they're all sort of facing towards the planet. You can also see they appear to have been joined by a number of like large sort of like troop carrying vessels which use in space because they're mainly sort of landers designed to like drop off like big loads of ground troops.
Okay. And do we have a reference for the princess?
I don't think that's unreasonable. Yeah, I'm happy to say you've got like the sort of like private comms for the princess.
Does anyone remember her name?
Princess, what's her name?
Cinderella.
Wasn't that complicated? I'm drawing a blank though.
Oh, my notes are somewhere.
It's fine. It was Princess Zonar.
So I guess we'll try and get her on the comms and explain that we've come back. We have a plan to extract her people and the symbiotes. And can she give us a breakdown of the situation? Because it looks like all hell has broken loose in the sector.
Okay, so you open the comm frequency, and as soon as it opens, you can hear the sound of like laser fire in the background. You can hear the sound of shouting, sort of crumbling masonry, like screaming, and above, it's quite hard to hear anything else above this din, to the point where you're like, when you first open the comms, because it's so loud, there's just this onrush of chaotic noise, basically, and you hear a very sort of faint, almost sort of quite sort of like sickly sounding voice that at first you don't really recognise, and then as obviously whoever it is like moved a bit closer to the comms or has tried to like boost the signal, you recognise that it is indeed the princess's voice. Although, like I say, she really doesn't sound very like well at all. And you hear this very faint voice say, "This is Princess R receiving."
What's the situation?
We're under heavy attack. The Dominion forces, they've been bombarding us, what remains of our cities, from orbit for the last 2 days. This morning at first light they started landing ground assault troops. A number of our people, we managed to get some of the old ships out of mothballs from one of the old museums, and they're trying to buy us some time. They won't last long though. They're antiquated ships with barely a particle blaster between them and no advanced combat capabilities. But they're just to buy us some time. But the people who are piloting them are brave. They volunteered. They knew what was being asked of them. And then like a note of sadness comes into voices. I don't expect any of them will survive to see a brighter tomorrow, but through their brave sacrifice, at least some of our people might be saved. And then there's like people shouting in the background, and you hear like some people like shouting in like the native tongue of the Zol. And he says, "Look, I can't stay on too long. The Dominion forces have been trying to locate me. We're going to have to move location soon. Look, we've managed to locate one ship that's..." And then the signal breaks up.
Okay. And can we track the signal? Where it came from?
You could do it. Normally you wouldn't have to make a roll for this. However, at the moment, because you're cloaked, which obviously limits your capabilities, if you wanted to do that, you would have to make a roll for it.
Okay.
So, since you're in the pilot seat, Tyler, would you like to roll me a d6? Okay, so thanks to your tech skills, basically, Tylo, you're like, oh, actually, there's a lot of... it's going to be very difficult for me just to, like, scan without someone noticing that we're scanning. However, there's a lot of comms chatter going on between all these Dominion ships and these little ships that are, like, trying to coordinate their attacks. Maybe if I, like, sort of piggyback our signal onto, like, one of theirs to, like, camouflage it, that might help. So it takes you a few minutes, but you do that. And you are picking up this signal. It's coming from one of the sort of remnants of like the ruined cities on the planet, and you can see that the signal is like indeed on the move. So presumably they've in a sort of like wartime like radio style, they've sort of set up like a comm booster, like as a little sort of station, and they're obviously now like, oh, they've probably spotted us. Right, we're going to pack all that up and we're going to like physically move it to a new location, which you wouldn't really need to do with like current technology. You can have like small like comm badges and little comms things, but you know that like most of the advanced current technology on their world was like wrecked, so they're using like old like museum pieces and things they've cobbled together. So you expect they've probably got like quite a big sort of like comms rig that they're having to use, and they're now physically having to like move that to a new location. And as you're watching, you can see like, as you're sort of glancing out the window, as you're sort of doing this, and any of the rest of you are looking out the portholes, you can see like this laser fire like flaring between the various ships. Occasionally one of the small vessels like explodes briefly as its atmosphere is expelled and then extinguished by the darkness of space, and there's like loads of like comms chatter going on.
2 options, guys. We can either try and engage the fleet, or we can go here, try and find the princess and save some of the species.
I think we have to land and save the princess and her kin. We can't take on the fleet.
So, what's the sort of take on how the situation will evolve between, people fighting currently? Do we know like what their chances might be even?
Slim to none.
0% chance they're alive in and out.
We need to go and try and save some people, I guess. No use like dashing ourselves against the Dominion.
No.
the way those ships are pointed, they're definitely going to start a heavier bombardment soon.
Yeah, and obviously you being familiar with the sort of makeup of ships, Tyler, I mean, you've been on plenty of ships, you've piloted plenty of ships in your day, and obviously Balan as well, probably due to your like military experience, you know that like if all of these ships that are currently pointing at the planet like full bore start like bombarding it with like major ordnance, it's just going to reduce this planet to like a lifeless ball of ash in like no time at all. But you notice they're not actually currently bombarding the planet. So whether they're waiting for something, whether they're just waiting for the go-ahead to like begin the final sort of bombardment, you're not sure.
I'll wager that the person that Tarn can sense is going to be on that planet.
John, can we hack the Dominion comms to understand what the escalation is?
You can try it. It would require a roll, and obviously the danger is if you fail that roll, your attempts to do that might be picked up, so it might compromise your location. Now, even if they didn't notice you, they wouldn't know, like, oh, they're over there, and they wouldn't be able to pinpoint you directly because you're cloaked, but they would know there was someone there with a more advanced ship than these ones they're fighting, because there's no way these primitive ships are like hacking into their comms. So they would know there's like a third party has like entered the fray, even if they didn't know exactly where you were. But it's possible. Like I say, there's just potentially consequences if you fail that roll.
What do you think, guys? Should we try and find out what's going on, or do we just land, get the princess?
I think we just assume we know what's going on and get the princess. Hitting the right encryption frequency is going to be pretty tricky.
Yeah, and you know that because they're like a military force, they'll probably be like cycling the comms frequencies on like a regular basis. So even if you did manage to hack in, it would only get you into their comms until they like cycled onto their next frequency, and then you'd have to like do it again if you wanted to keep up with it.
Okay.
Let's just crack on.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. As you're about to begin your descent towards the planet Zol Prime, you're picking up a broadcast on a public frequency. It appears to be coming from one of the smaller vessels, and you hear a man's voice. You don't recognise it, and the voice says, "If you're listening to this, you don't know me, and that's fine. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that my homeworld has been starving, our homeworld strangled by Dominion blockades. I saw people fighting over scraps like dogs, but I also saw mothers giving their last crumb of bread to feed a child, and I thought hope was lost. And then the princess returned to us, and she reminded me that dying well is better than living like an animal. And so we will fight and we will die, but we will die on our own terms, and like the proud men and women our ancestors were. If anyone else hears this, know that we did not die in vain, and the Dominion may crush 1,000 worlds, but if they cannot crush our souls, then they will never win. Not as long as one person rises up against them and says no more. Now, my friends, for our people and for Princess Dinar, fight for your freedom." And then the comms breaks off. And you notice that these smaller vessels seem to like redouble their attacks, and they're literally just throwing themselves against these like huge ships, these impossible odds. You're watching as like they're exploding sort of around you. They're these brief flares of fire lighting up the darkness.
Well, better go faster.
And you continue your descent down under cloak to Zol Prime. You land. You basically just pick one of the ruins like near to where the signal's been coming from. You land the ship down as previously. You can see that although the world was sort of partially destroyed last time you were here, it is now almost entirely devastated. What few buildings remained are little more than rubble lying on the ground. There is the hiss of smoke rising into the air from still burning ruins, and as you're landing you can see sort of around you, and you can pick up on your scanners, sort of like heavily armed Dominion troopers moving through the ruins. You can see a sort of flash of laser rifles, and occasionally you see what appear to be small, ragged bands of the people of Zol Prime, and they're literally fighting with like flintlocks and like any weapons they can get their hands on, like crowbars and anything they can use as a weapon. You see them like dodging through the ruins, wearing little more than rags, firing off these weapons of the heavily armoured Dominion troops. But slowly but surely they're being driven back by the heavily armoured troops of the Dominion. You think that, as per the comms, they've obviously landed some troops in the past couple of days, and like the sort of troop carriers you've seen in orbit are basically like the second wave of like troops. So the Dominion already has boots on the ground, so to speak. But you have landed the ship, you are cloaked. Obviously you landed a bit away from like the direct fighting, so as not to give yourselves away. But you're sort of picking up this sporadic fighting on your scanners as you land. What do you want to do?
Is there any fighting near us at all?
There is a small firefight going on about maybe 50 metres to the west. You're sort of picking up like the weapons fire on your scans. Obviously, because like you're using ship scans, it's not really built to pick up like individual people on a planet, but you are picking up like the energy discharges of like weapons being fired in like a small cluster of ruins to the west.
Are we picking up any ships nearby if we think she's heading for a ship?
You're not picking up any sign of any vessels like on the planet or currently sort of leaving the planet heading into orbit. However, Tylome, roll me d6.
One.
Okay, you're looking at the scanners and obviously you're collating all of this data, and for just like a split second you think you pick up a vessel like that's on the planet, sort of like basically getting ready to take off, but then like the signal's gone as though it was never there.
So there's a chance there's a small ship on the planet that's cloaked itself now.
Was it nearby? Did we get a location?
No, unfortunately not, because like I say, it was literally just like and gone. You just noticed it very briefly, and then by the time you sort of like went, oh, it disappeared.
Okay.
And assume they're going to start their bombardment very soon.
Yeah. So do you want to try and raise the princess again, and I'll head for this firefight with the security droid and see what we can, if we can save anyone?
Yeah, but I don't think calling Tarn security droid is going to be a good nickname.
Tan can come too.
Okay, so you guys start making your way towards this small firefight that seems to be breaking out. As you get there, you're sort of like, you're picking up on your personal scanners. There appears to be 12 Dominion troopers and approximately like 6 of these Zol. You recognise, as you're sort of like approaching like cautiously, you recognise the dark armoured figures of the Dominion shadow troopers, similar to the ones you encountered previously on the science base. You can see that as you're sort of approaching, you can just about make out like a sort of ragged band of these Zol wearing like ragged hoods, and they're carrying like sort of like almost like primitive sort of like machine guns effectively, that they're sort of like firing and like trying to snipe out of these ruins. Most of the bullets that they're firing are just like pinging off the heavy armour that the Dominion shadow troopers are wearing, and they're sort of using the cover. They're not like pinned down, but they're sort of trying to use the cover, and they're like firing back with laser rifles. You can see like the lights flashing across the laser fire, and occasionally you see a bit of dust chewed up by one of these like physical bullets that's being fired from the archaic weaponry of the Zol.
Okay.
No one seems to have noticed you yet because they're too intent on like dealing with each other, but
Okay.
you're still a bit of a distance away. There is a chance they'll notice you as you sort of get closer.
Mercs are for.
Sorry.
That's what the mercenaries are for.
Yeah. So I guess I have a rifle, the droid has a rifle, and we have 4 mercs.
How many rifles we got? Can we equip them with rifles?
No, we only have 1 for each of the mercs, I think.
Hand blaster.
I don't think we did. But I think if we open fire on the shadow troopers, we can get them to escape.
Okay.
So we just lay down fire and get the Zol to come with us and then fall back towards the ship.
Are these the mechanical troopers, aren't they?
No, they're the not the generic ones. They're the commandos.
Yeah, exactly.
Not
right.
droids.
No, they're not droids. They're the. You remember the guys who were guarding like the stairs to the like, lower levels on the base.
Yeah.
The ones whose uniforms you nicked. They're them. They're not
Okay.
they're not the bog standard Dominion troops. They're like the elite Dominion troops.
Start shooting them then.
Although, to be fair, to point out to you guys, you do have like, as far as I remember, like Dominion Shadow Troop like armor.
Yep.
Because you robbed it off them.
Yeah, we used that to kill everyone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, can we recon that we're wearing?
Yeah, like I say, you pick them up on the scanners. Now it's probably going to be more of a problem for Tarn because he can't really like wear armor because his body is armor. So like he doesn't need it, but he can't just like slip on a normal suit of armor because he's like a bit chunkier than the average bear.
And what do the Void Knights wear? They're just like...
You've not actually seen one in person. There's only been like mental communication between one and Tan.
No, didn't we see one in a...
Yeah, he was wearing like black robes.
Okay.
But you didn't really get like a good look at the one you saw because you sort of dealt with him pretty rapidly about blowing up the ship he was standing on.
Yeah.
So you basically saw him when he's wearing robes, and then he was like, "Curse you, player characters!" and like the ship like fell into like the orbit of like the planet, or fell into the atmosphere of the planet. So you only saw him for like 5 seconds as he was like.
Okay, but if you...
Do you want me to pretend to be a void now? Is that it? I guess I'll get like a tarp.
Yeah, getting like a piece of like dark cloth is not an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, I guess we're going in. I mean, you know, the signs were there.
Okay, so as you're entering the area of combat, what's the plan, guys?
I guess you want to flank the 12 shadow troopers
Okay.
and start taking them out in 2s and 3s.
Just stay behind so we get the element of surprise. We should be able to pick 2 or 3 off straight away.
Okay. So effectively, you guys will get like a surprise round where you'll get to act, and they won't. So for this first surprise round, what do you guys want to do? Like individually. I mean, I don't know. Are you going out, Tyler, or are you?
I'm still on the ship because I've got to keep the cloak up and...
Okay, cool. But obviously, yeah, you've still got comms open, so you can all still communicate. So we've basically got... Have you taken any of the mercs out with you?
Take all 4 because I've got security droid.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about all it's good for at the minute is standing in place and shooting things.
Obviously, the mercs will go... So we'll do like group initiative when it gets to that. So obviously, I'll leave you to roll for like the mercs.
Yeah.
And sort of work out their hit points, etc. Okay, so you've got a first sort of surprise round where both Tan and Balan can act, and your 4 mercenaries can act before like, we even get into combat rounds because they don't know you're there.
Okay. So I think we'll just open fire and just try and get 2 or 3 of them.
Okay, go for it. Make your attack roll. The AC of the Dominion Shadow Troopers is 16. So 16 or above to hit.
So no on the first, and No, on the second. Okay, so that looks like 1.
Okay, so roll your damage for your 1 merc that's hit.
So that's 7 hit points of damage.
Okay, so one of you, there's a cavalcade of shots from yourself and your 4 mercenaries are like firing your laser rifles. Most of the shots go wide because it's quite difficult to see because of all the smoke and the debris and the general chaos that's going on. Because obviously you guys aren't just stood there shooting like that. You're ducking into cover, you're moving around, you're trying to avoid being seen. One of your shots either like dings one of the shadow troopers, and you sort of like see him like throw a hand to his side as like a laser blast scorches his side. He's not down though. Okay, Tan, what do you want to do?
So the idea of dressing me up as a Void Knight is like, are we doing shenanigans, or are we going in punching their lights out?
In retrospect, we probably shouldn't have opened fire straight away, but Balan is like trigger happy, so
yeah, pretty much the way it's broken down so far is you've all like had this discussion and you're like, right, okay, we're gonna go in stealthy. I'm disguised as a shadow trooper. You're disguised as the Void Knight. We can walk in. We can like take them by surprise. We can like be in the midst of them. We'll be on them before they know what happened. Then as soon as you get there and you see this firefight breaking out, perhaps Balan's a bit trigger happy. Perhaps it's his anger at seeing these vastly outmatched, sort of poor, deprived people. But pretty much as soon as he like gets his boots into the combat area, like the plan goes out of his head, and him and the mercs like. So pretty much your stealth is like shot. Tan like sort of surveying the scene with your computer enhanced reactions. You're like, that's the element of surprise gone. They know we're here. You've got like a few seconds to act before they can muster a response.
Oh, I'll pop out the laser rifle. Go to work.
Go for it. AC 16.
It was almost 17.
Okay, so
mass damage too.
Again, you snap off a laser shot, but it goes wide. So now we are on to normal initiative. So either Tan or Balan, it's up to you which one it is. Roll a d6 for your like group initiative.
Do you want to go?
Okay, I'll roll for a d6 for the enemy. Okay. Obviously, they're more occupied with the rebel scum than I originally thought. So yeah, it's taking them longer to muster a response because they're slightly more pinned down by the Zol than it first appeared. So you guys are going to get to act again before they get to respond. So, Tan, what do you want to do?
What's the plan?
Yeah, I imagine that as this is going on, Tan's like, what's the plan? And all the mercenaries like,
sorry, totally mind blank. We should definitely do something to confuse them.
So there's the rebels come as discussed. What are they doing currently?
They are sort of like with these primitive firearms. They're like firing at the Dominion shadow troopers like out of the ruins. Occasionally they like pop out of the ruins and they're like firing these primitive like stub guns effectively towards the Dominion shadow troopers, and it seems to be that's sort of like causing the slightly slow response of the Dominion troopers because they're aware that like now you're sort of like moving in, but they're also like, we can't turn our full attention to you because we've also got these guys here who are like firing us. We've gone from like, oh, we're overwhelming these poor peons to like now we're in a crossfire. So they're sort of like hunkering down a bit more in like the ruins that they're using as cover.
So are we trying to lift these people off, or are we trying to get to the princess? And because we're not getting everyone out, that's very clear.
Yeah.
So are we trying to extract the princess?
I think we're trying to extract these 6 in the hope that they can tell us where the princess is.
Okay.
As an objective.
Right. So, laser rifle.
Go for it.
Helps in that. So, cover and then laser rifle. Which again, that was gonna be a 16, but you know how it goes.
That's it. Best laid plans.
So I think I'll call out to the 6 Zol
Yep.
to start moving away as we're laying down cover fire, and then lay down cover fire.
Okay, roll me 2d6 and subtract 2, because unfortunately you're dressed like a Dominion trooper as you're shouting this at them.
Three.
You shout this at them, but they ignore you.
Okay.
Because basically they're like, oh, we're being attacked by some Dominion troopers. Oh, in come some more Dominion troopers with this weird, like, freaky robot man. And one of the Dominion troopers is like, oh, fall back, we're on your side, guys. And they're like, nah, son.
Right. And I will miss again. And miss again. Two.
Yeah, just tell me how much hit points.
12.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so as a result of the combined fire of yourself and the mercenaries, 2 of the shadow troopers go down. You hear sort of cries as they fall down in the ruins. Okay, now we come to the shadow troopers. Obviously, they're not all going to turn and instantly fire at you because they're also firing at the Zol. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll a d6, and the result I get is the number of shadow troopers who are firing at you this round. 1. Okay. So I'm going to roll another d6. On a 1 to 4, they shoot at one of the mercs. 5, they shoot at Balan. 6, they shoot at Tam. Okay, so they're shooting at one of the mercs. What's the AC of the mercs?
They're all wearing heavy armor, so 16.
Lovely jubbly. Okay, so one of the mercs takes a 7 damage as he's sort of winged by one of these las blasts from a Dominion shadow trooper.
Hey.
And as the fire continues, you hear a cry from the Zol encampment as you see one of them get taken down by a last blast straight to the chest. He leaps up with his stub gun to fire at the Dominion shadow troopers, and one of them just drills him through the chest with a practiced laser shot, and he's just "Ah!" and falls back into the ruins.
That's a dead merc as well, John.
Okay. So you now have 3 mercs remaining. So yeah, so likewise, as you're all firing, one of the mercs perhaps sticks his head up a bit too far to get a clear shot, and just a las blast catches him in the side of the head, and he staggers backwards with a cry and falls to the ground dead. Okay, so it's back round to you guys again. Like I say, aside from suppressing them a bit, the Zol fire, because it's just primitive stub guns, appears to be having little to no effect on the Dominion troopers because of their armour.
Shall we just whittle them down?
Yeah.
Okay, here it goes. There we go. No, we don't. Oh, that's you're doing the work.
Okay. All right, let's try that again. All right, so that's 6 on the first.
Okay.
And 6 on the second.
Okay, so you fire your laser rifle twice in quick succession. You hit one of the shadow troopers and he falls to the ground. Then you swing round very rapidly, firing at a second one, but this shot just sort of like hits his shoulder. You can see it's obviously like penetrated his armor and like injured him slightly, but not enough to take him out. So there's 3 of the shadow troopers are down.
Okay, and that is no hits from the mercs.
Okay, so the mercs perhaps they're sort of like dragging like their dead comrade like back into cover or something. Their fire doesn't have any appreciable effect on the Dominion troops. So again, I'm just going to roll a d6, see how many Dominion guys are shooting at you. So 4 this time. So again, I'll randomise their rolls. Okay, so we've got 3 shooting at mercs and 1 shooting at Balan. So the 3 shooting at the mercs. One hit for 4 damage.
Okay.
Second one hits the mercs for 3 damage.
Okay.
Third one hits the mercs for 6 damage.
6 damage.
Yep.
Okay.
So how are the mercs looking at the moment?
A little bit worse for wear.
Okay, no problems. Right, then the one that's shooting at you, Balan. It's a 16 a hit on you.
No.
Okay, so it's absorbed by your armour. You see like laser blasts sort of like riddling the mercenaries are with you. One like tags you, but your armour manages to turn it aside. Let me see how the... Okay, so another 2 of the Zol are taken out. You can see there's only like 3 of them remaining now, and there's still like 9 of these shadow troopers, although one of them's slightly injured.
Okay.
Obviously, you can see all this going on your scanners, Tylo. You had plenty of time to like calibrate it to get a more exact sort of picture of the battle now, and obviously you've got the comms going on as well.
What's the terrain like where they're fighting?
It must have once been sort of fairly sort of pastoral, like grassland, you know, like buildings dotted here and there, but it's pretty much a field of broken rubble now as far as the eye can see. Obviously the earlier bombardment has just like smashed all these buildings down. There's blocks of stone, bits of metal and like rubble lying everywhere, and you can see on your scanners as people are moving around, they're obviously trying to like take cover besides like big blocks of stone, like metal girders and stuff like that.
How close together are the soldiers?
They're pretty they're obviously operating as like a squad, so they're a little bit dispersed because they're trying to take advantage of cover, but they're pretty sort of close together.
Is it feasible to land the O'Neill on them?
Yeah, it's perfectly feasible.
Oh, I'll do that then.
Okay, no problems. So, guys, as you're sort of engaged in this like pitched firefight with these remaining sort of like 9 shadow troopers, suddenly there's like a slight sort of distortion in the air over the ruins that they're hiding in, and then like seemingly with like nothing actually causing it, both the ruins and like the remaining shadow troopers are like reduced to a 2-dimensional sort of consistency, as like the ruins and the shadow troopers are literally like squashed down as though below a great weight. And as you sort of like quickly look in that direction, you can just see the sort of faint like imprints of where like the landing legs of the O'Neill have like pressed into the ground.
Okay.
And I'll bounce back off again.
Yep, no problem. There's like a sort of expulsion of dust as like blows this cloud that causes anyone on the ground to sort of like shield their faces as like the O'Neill sort of takes off again, obviously still cloaked. And as you guys sort of like head forwards. No fire coming from the squashed shadow troopers anymore. You can literally see they've just been like squashed flat along with these like ruins. They're sort of like pressed into the ground, like broken armor and like broken limbs lying everywhere.
Okay. So can I try and call out to the Zal again?
Yep.
And ask them to come and take these rifles and
Okay, roll me 2d6, no minus this time.
7.
Okay, the three surviving Zols, like, they seem a bit unsure. Like they don't know what's going on. They just know that like they were under fire a minute ago, and now it's stopped, and like almost like some invisible hand has just gone and like squashed their enemies. So they're like they're still like holding their weapons up, like ready to go. But they're, I mean, you're like, with my armor on, like even if they do shoot at me, those things ain't doing anything. But they slowly make their way out, and someone's like, "Who are you?"
We are the people who brought Princess Sonora back, and we have come here to rescue her. Now that the Dominion are attacking.
You hear a bit of hushed, sort of like whispered conversation between these three surviving Zol, and then they sort of like they've like lowered the weapons, but they're still holding them. They sort of hesitantly make their way out of the ruins where they've been taking cover. You can see that quite a few of them have got like injuries and sort of like burn marks on them as like signs of combat, but they slowly sort of like walk over to where you're standing, although they're looking. It's difficult to tell whether they're giving you or Tan like more of the stink eye, because like you're dressed like a Dominion trooper, but he's a giant robot with like a black robe on. So they're still very wary, but they do approach. And the one who spoke previously says, "You say you're the people who brought the princess back?"
We are.
He says, "Oh, well, you come at the right time. We're just trying to buy her some time." And he looks down at like the crap sort of like stub gun he's carrying, and he's like, "Look, we know that these weapons don't stand a chance against the Dominion troopers. We're just trying to buy the princess some time to do what needs to be done. Like those brave souls up there." And he sort of jerks a thumb upwards into the sky.
And what needs to be done?
He leans in, and he's sort of looking around, like he gestures to like his two companions to like keep a lookout, and then he says, we managed to find a single old vessel with a working cloaking device. It's not in great shape, but and he looks a little bit sort of sad. He says, the princess has made a great sacrifice to ensure that at least some of our people can get away on the cloaked vessel. All of this that we're doing, it's just to buy time and distraction for that one vessel to get out of it. I mean, it's got the remaining few symbionts on board, and those few people who were chosen to survive this on it can nowhere near carry all of our surviving people, even though we are reduced in numbers. But at least some of us might survive.
Okay.
He says, unfortunately, I don't think the princess herself will live to see the result that her sacrifices made possible.
Okay. So, will you take these more powerful weapons from these troopers and continue what you were doing? And can you tell us where we might find the princess?
Yes, she's at the ruins about 2 miles in that direction, and he sort of indicates the direction.
Okay.
And he shouts to his colleagues. He's like, "You two," he's like, "round up those weapons and any armor that's still salvageable. See if we can distribute it to the rest. Call them in. At least we might stand a chance of delaying them for a short while longer, and they start like gathering up anything that's salvageable."
Okay.
Although obviously, like quite a few of the weapons aren't really usable because they're now like flat.
Mm-hmm. And then we would be like, "Taxi!" And we'll call Tylo in to collect us and bring us to the Maroons.
Okay. Yep, so Tylo, you fly in, you pick up your two colleagues and the three surviving mercs. You take off, you fly. I mean, it takes you a matter of minutes to travel to these ruins a few miles distance, because obviously using like thrusters and like planetary sort of drive. You land near the ruins, still cloaked. You can see again a few more of these sort of like ragged survivors, like moving around, wearing just like whatever clothing they can cobble together, odd like plates of metal and anything they can use as like serviceable armor, any weapons they can scavenge, sort of like moving around in these ruins. You set down the O'Neill like a short distance away, because you don't just want to like land right on top of them.
Okay. So John, while we were doing that, I'll have given each of the mercs a med kit.
Okay.
To get them back to something resembling.
Yeah, that's fine. Feel free.
Health. And then I guess in the few minutes I'll have taken off the Shadow Trooper, so as not to scare anybody.
That's fine. Obviously, unequip it on your character sheet because it may change your armor class.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you've got these ruins in front of you. You're about 5 minutes jog away from these ruins, where apparently, according to the Zol, that's where the princess is located. What do you want to do?
Okay. So I guess I want to start heading for the ruins and start telling people to move towards the ship that we have come to rescue them.
Okay, yeah, now you're sort of like not in Dominion gear. It doesn't take a lot for you to persuade people. And like a few of the people there who were presumably present when you either were present when you brought the princess back, or have like heard descriptions of you from the princess, like actually recognise you. And like these Zol sort of survivors start making their way towards where you're basically like, no, there's a ship there, honestly. Because you just like pointing at empty space and you're like, it is there, trust me. And they start sort of like fighting their way towards it. So Tylo, you see this like ragged band of like these Zol refugees effectively sort of snaking their way roughly towards the direction of your ship, because they're like, it's somewhere over here, but we can't actually see it.
I'll get the mercs to direct survivors onto the ship.
Yeah, not a problem. You like drop down the ramp. There's like a couple of mercs at the bottom of the ramp, and they're like ushering people on board, and like this small stream of Zol refugees starts heading up onto the O'Neill. So back to Balan and Tan, you're making your way through these ruins looking for the princess. Tan, can you please roll me 8d6? Okay, that's fine. So eventually, as you make your way through the ruins, you do see, as suspected by Tylo and yourselves, in the sort of ruined, like almost bombed out remnants of, like, you know, sort of just a corner of a building where like the rest of it's fallen away. You do see what appears to be a very crude, sort of almost like this sort of size, like metal box with like circuits and knobs and dials on it, which you recognise as a crude sort of like comms array that's been built from like scavenged parts. And as you head towards, you can see there's a couple of the Zol there, and you see the princess sort of, she seems to be like being supported by one of the other Zol, and she's like fiddling around with the controls of this comm booster. Even from this, you can see she looks very pale, very drawn and pallid, and like distinctly unwell. And you can see that like this other Zol's like pretty much sort of like holding her up while she's trying to work this comms array.
Okay. Princess, you look unwell.
She sort of like turns around, and for a moment she looks a little bit confused, almost like she doesn't recognise you. And then she says, "Oh, yes, yes. Unfortunately, I don't think I have very long, but I determined to do the best I can to help my people away from here. Unfortunately, I think our world is lost."
Okay. Well, we have found you a home for any of your people who do survive.
She smiles and says, "Alas, I fear, not for myself, but as long as my people survive, that is the main thing."
And have you put your symbiotes on the ship already, or do you need space for more?
Those that survive, we managed to salvage an old vessel with a crude cloaking device on it. There weren't enough room for all of our people, so we chose people by random lots to go on the ship along with the surviving symbiotes.
Okay.
One of my trusted lieutenants, Zan Ren, is taking the ship, and hopefully whilst those brave people sacrifice themselves up above in the darkness of space, and as she's saying this, she sort of sways dangerously as though she's going to fall over, and the guy who's like holding her up sort of steadies her, while their brave sacrifice will hopefully allow our one cloaked vessel to slip away unnoticed.
Okay. Well, we also have a cloaked vessel, so you should join us. You and what's left of your people.
She smiles and then says, I would be grateful for any of my people you can take from here. Alas, as I say, I believe the Dominion ground troops are searching for myself, and they won't cease in their efforts until they have located me. However, I've determined that they should not take me, and that when they do find me, at least I may be able to buy a chance. And again, she sort of sways a little bit. I may buy them a chance to escape. And as she says, as she sort of like turns round and she lifts up like the lower half of her sort of shirt, and sort of where her stomach is, you can see like a ragged sort of scar on her stomach, and it's been very crudely like stitched together.
Okay. Is there no way to convince you to leave this place?
She smiles a little bit sadly and she says, in a way, I've already left. The Zan symbiote that I once played host to has been removed and has been implanted into my lieutenant Ren. So in a way, everything that I saw and experienced before now has already left this place. Unfortunately, when a symbiote is removed, it is only a matter of time before the previous host perishes. Once they are fused, the two systems cannot survive without each other. And she sort of places her hand on her stomach. But I have a small surprise planned for the Dominion, and she smiles a little.
Okay. And where might we find Zan Ren to ensure that we can assist them in their endeavours and help them find a home?
She is on board she's on board the cloaked vessel. They should have already left the surface of this world.
Okay.
I do not know their exact destination. In case somehow the Dominion did manage to get the information out to me, I purposely asked them not to tell me.
Okay. Okay. I guess we'll turn to any of the people who are there and ask anyone who wants to leave to join the crew or join the ship or get on the ship. And is there any more symbiotes or equipment that you need removed, Princess, or is it all gone?
She says, no, we have precious little equipment anyway, and the surviving dozen or so symbionts have been loaded onto the cloaked vessel. There are only myself and those people who were not fortunate enough to be chosen to go on the vessel who remain.
Okay.
If you can get any of them away, I would be most grateful.
Okay.
Although I fear unfortunately, this is a gratitude I will not be able to repay you, since I do not have long.
It was truly an honour to have met you, Princess.
She smiles sadly and then says, "The feeling is more than mutual." And as I say, in a way, since my symbiote goes on, I go on. If you do manage to find Zan Ren, all of the memories I have of you and our experiences together are now within Zan Ren.
Okay. Yes, I will look out for her and what is left of your kin as best I can.
At this point, can you roll me 3d20, please?
17, 15, and 12.
Okay, so there are basically 44 Zol sort of like remaining that you can potentially like evacuate.
Okay. So that's probably, it's a tight squeeze, but we've managed.
Yeah,
So.
you'd not want to sort of like have that many people on board the O'Neill for like a long haul, but just for like getting them to an adjacent sector and putting them on the bigger ship, you know, it's like a day's travel. So you're like, yeah, we're going to be cramped AF for a day, but then we'll be like, oh, now we're at the huge ship, there's plenty of space.
Okay. And then I suggest we get out of Dodge.
The princess says, how long do you need to get away? It's my intent to accidentally use this comms relay point to let the Dominion know my location.
Minutes.
Yeah. Once the people are aboard.
I'll give you 15 minutes before I send the signal out. Again, you have the thanks of myself and my people. I wish I could thank you in any other way, but I'm sure if you can find Zan Ren, she will do what I would have done in her situation. But I'll give you 15 minutes before I send the signal. Go with the grace of the ancients and my thanks. And you see, like, basically she's got like a finger on the switch, like ready to send the signal. The Zol who's with her says, she turns to him and she says, go with these people, get aboard their ship, they'll take you to safety. And he says no, someone needs to stay here to make sure you're able to use the comm signal. I will stay here with you. And then she sort of smiles, pats him on the shoulder and says, you're a brave man. Go, my friends, go. And all the rest of the Zols are sort of like filing onto the ship.
Okay.
Okay, you all returning to the O'Neill?
Yeah.
Okay. You start heading back towards the O'Neill, and all the Zol, all 44 of them are now on board. The Mercs are sort of like giving you the thumbs up as you approach and sort of gesturing on the ship to let you know that they're all on board. As Balan, you've just sort of like headed up the ramp, you're just sort of like getting inside. Tiny, you've just sort of stepped on the ramp when suddenly you feel the presence again, but much closer this time. And then from behind you, you hear a female voice that you recognise from the prior mental communication say, well, this is a surprise. I didn't think our meeting would be for a number of weeks. And as you turn round, you see a pallid, young, humanoid woman wearing sort of like dark red robes. You can see what looks like a star sword hanging quite openly off her belt. And she sort of stands there, the wind dramatically ruffling her cloak, smoke from the ruins and the burning fires of Zol Prime billowing about her as you sort of stand there, the gleaming metal of your new form at the bottom of the ramp, Tan, sort of facing this Void Knight, perhaps? What do you do?
So, not translucent, not a hologram.
No, appears to be flesh and blood.
I'll reach out with the way and use one of my meditations to try and scour her thoughts. Let's see what come on, BDF. Without saying anything, I'll immediately just go for detecting the thoughts. So,
okay, now don't forget, because of your mechanical interference, you need to make a D6 roll first.
So, okay, how far away
She's about 50 feet away, give or take.
Right. Okay. So let's roll for the interference there.
It's basically you need to not get a 1.
I think you built.
Oh, well, yeah, I built it in. You're right.
Thing.
Yeah, so you can just roll it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you where to succeed. You've succeeded.
Right. So. Okay.
So, despite the interference of your mechanical body, you managed to reach out to the way.
So what it says is, the Star Knight can detect the thoughts of other beings in the range. The range is 60.
Okay. So you can just read her mind, basically.
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay. So what you're sort of, because she's slightly shielded by her own use of the void, and her thoughts feel very cold and unpleasant and almost clammy as so your presence like slides into her mind. You're getting the feeling that she's almost like amused to like find you here. Like her thoughts aren't like, oh, I'm gonna wreck this sucker. She's more sort of like amused to sort of like find you here. She seems to be sort of like, see this, it's more like a sort of like verbal like sparring match. She's not like, I must kill this fool now. And you get the sort of impression that she's almost like bored by the events like taking place on this planet. She's like here because she's been asked to be here, but like she's not really emotionally invested in what's going on. Like all these people like dying and this planet being reduced to rubble, she could care less.
Well, fate has a way, I suppose.
Indeed it does.
So what now?
Well, that's rather up to you. You are much changed from when last we spoke. Your thoughts are strange and difficult to read.
I have clawed my way back from death. That is an experience that does have an impact on a person.
It says, indeed, if once you have touched the void, you are never quite the same again.
What do you want?
It says, for the moment, information only. I'm intrigued by the changes in you. Of course, the Dominion has experimented in their crude fashion with attempting to meld mechanics with those of us who wield the power of the way, with little to no success. Tell me, how does returning from death in this altered form, how does it affect your feelings of the way? Are you now ready to seize true power and to open yourself up to the true majesty of the one true way?
I'll chuckle and say, if you know anything, you know that the way is life. And I am at best a crude imitation of that. There's a bit left, which is why you can seek me out.
She smiles and sort of like points at her head and says, the body is simply flesh. It is the mind and the spirit where true power resides.
Be that as it may, I'm not much of a lab rat for you now to go poking around in.
At which point, can you make me a dex roll, please?
That's dex. Should go off that. That's a failure.
Okay. At which point she smiles and she suddenly throws her hand out like that. And as she does so, your star sword leaps out of its holster and just like flies into her hand.
At which point I'll take the other one and ignite that.
Yeah. she smiles. Obviously, it's like the alien one that she's like.
Yeah, because that's the one that I used.
Yeah.
This is my backup.
She looks at it, and then she says, "Interesting, not of standard design." And then almost she sort of like flicks the switch that like sends the blade out. She not like attacking you, she sort of experimentally like goes like that. Then she de-ignites it and she just throws it back to you.
Okay. I'll grab that, ignite that too.
Okay. As you're sort of doing this, you suddenly hear like a shout from back on board the ship, and one of like the Zol like refugees has been on board, like obviously seeing this going on, just like runs down the ramp like firing at this this Void Knight. You see her like activate her Star Sword, and she basically does the old like
Void Saber.
Like deflecting these, like sort of chopping in half these bullets as they're like flashing out towards her. Then she reaches out, clenches her fist, and suddenly the Zolo's like firing just suddenly goes like, and it just like falls down on the ramp, and still with her hands sort of held out like that, she says, "I do so hate rudeness." And then she sort of goes like that, and as she does, it's like all of the tension like flows out of this now like dead Zol, and his body just like slumps on the ramp.
I've answered your question. You have killed
No one of importance.
Nevertheless, is there a point to any of this, or shall we cross swords?
If that is what you wish. And she like brings up her saber in front of her face.
So, what are you guys doing with the? Because I'm on the ramp.
Yeah. So obviously you guys can see this going on. You've heard the Zol like, and then he's just like, and drop down dead. And you can hear
There's
this like
three goddamn star swords burning.
Yeah, you can see like Tan there with like the alien Star Sword and his own, his like original one sort of ignited, having this like oddly sort of measured conversation with this obviously like evil Void Knight who's just like killed someone with a clench of a fist. And he's just like, "Oh, we're gonna cross swords then," and she's like, "Well, if that's what you wish," and gets ready in like the sort of like ready to go stance with the saber held up. Obviously, there's like a couple of minutes that'll take to happen. What are you guys doing?
I'm debating flying off.
It's certainly a possibility. You could just be like ramp up.
Yeah, see it.
So I think I'll have been trying to settle some people, and I'll come back in just to hear this, see her kill this person, and then I'll just push the button to close the ramp. I'll have the ramp come up as Tan is standing on it, and then
Okay,
just like
so Tam, the ramp starts going up with you on it. Are you just like going up with it?
So yeah, it's a scene of like the lift off is starting to happen, the ramp is closing, and I'm just staring at the Void Knight as we the contact breaks as the ramp.
And indeed, the last thing you see just as like the ramp comes up and you lose sight of her is again you see a slightly crooked smile on her pale face, and she like unignites her Star Sword, and then she says, "Perhaps another time," and the ramp shuts.
Yeah, I'll put my swords away.
I'll fly off.
Yeah, the ship takes off, and as you sort of look out of the portholes, Tan, obviously the ship's still cloaked. You see like the massive downdraft as the thrusters are engaged. You see this figure sort of stood there unmoving, the cloak whipping about her as the draft and the dust and everything from the O'Neill taking off sort of whips up the ruins and the dust around her into like this small sort of cyclone. But aside from her clothes, she seems largely unmoved, just like looking up at the O'Neill, or roughly where the O'Neill would be, as you sort of like lift up, and as you sort of head up into like the low orbit, you lose sight of her as you enter the cloud layer.
I'll say to Balan as he's sort of coming up there and closing the ramp and all this. Like, sorry, I couldn't save this one up.
Yeah, it's pretty much just the ramp has gone up, like the body of the Zol's just like.
Couldn't save this one because I needed to stop her from coming abroad, killing all of them.
We saved as many as we can. I think maybe now what we want to do is stamp on some Dominion troops. Bit of payback.
As you're sort of scanning, as all this conversation is going on, Tylo, you register like an unshielded like comm signal going out from the ruins where the princess was, and immediately there's like loads of like Dominion like comms chatter from like troops on the planet, and like you don't have to listen to it to know that they've just gone, oh, we've located the princess, like all units converge. And assuming you guys like continue taking off, as you're
still climb.
As you're leaving Zol Prime, you pick up a small Dominion ship leaving the planet, heading towards one of the larger sort of gunships, and from the comms chatter you like pick up they have captured the princess and they're like taking her back to one of the ships for interrogation. As you're leaving the sector, you see this like little ship dock, this like little sort of shuttle docks with one of the larger Dominion ships, and then a few moments later a massive explosion from the device implanted in the princess's stomach where the symbiont once lay explodes, crippling the large vessel, throwing the ordered Dominion fleet into chaos. Debris spins off from this massive explosion, impacting with the neighbouring Dominion vessels, and as you're sort of heading out, you see that pretty much all of the Zol small ships have been wiped out, but the Dominion force is thrown into like chaos by the crippling of one of their larger ships and the damage done to the ships around it, allowing you to slip silently out of the system, and you head back.
You want to shoot something? Now's the time to do it.
No, I think we need to get these people out of here. Plenty of time for...
Yeah, there's a lot of Dominion to go around.
Yeah.
And as you say that, you slip silently out of the system, heading for your rendezvous with the Tobruk and the people that you left there, where you plan to offload these 44 Zol refugees. And that is where we're going to draw an end to the session for this evening, guys. Thank you very much for playing. Apologies for the slight technical difficulties earlier, but I hope you still enjoyed the session anyway.
All good.
Yeah, no, it was good.
Yep.
So we'll sort out XP and all of that malarkey, but we're going to stop the stream here. So thanks to my wonderful players, and hopefully we'll catch you next time. Take it easy.